The IEC once more. The business of elections have definitely taken a higher road. I'm going to allow the Chief Electoral Officer of the IEC, Ntate Mosotho Miepia. Sitting next to him is Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Saima Mabolo, and next to him is Grenville Abrahams, who's also our senior manager, and we've got colleagues from the IEC in this gathering, but I'm going to allow the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Mosotho Miepia, to address the gathering this morning as we begin preparations for voter registration weekend.
Thank you, Kate, and good morning to colleagues and friends from the media. The Electoral Commission is calling on all eligible voters to come out in their numbers, to register and to update their details ahead of the upcoming 2016 municipal elections during this weekend's voter registration drive. Voting stations will be open throughout the country between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturday, 5 March and Sunday, 6 March to assist those voters who never before registered to register as voters for the first time. Those who previously registered but have moved since they registered to re-register in the new voting districts. And those who have whose registration status may have been impacted by changes to ward or voting district boundary changes to re-register in their new voting districts. The Electoral Commission is also calling on all registered voters, even if they have not changed address or been impacted by boundary changes, to use this opportunity to visit their voting station, to update their address and contact details, to help enhance the voters' role. The Electoral Commission is confident that everything is in place for this weekend's registration to run smoothly and efficiently, with all materials delivered and ready, including 10 million registration forms and 33,000 zip scanner machines. There will be approximately 52,000 staff members who have been trained and are ready to assist voters. We'll also have some 22,570 voting stations that we have identified opening on Saturday and Sunday. All those visiting a voting station should have with them a valid South African identity document, namely either a green barcoded ID book, a smart card ID, or a valid temporary identification certificate. Applicants will also need to provide an address of where they live that is located in the voting district where they are registering. Where voters do not have a formal address, they will need to provide sufficient details of where they live to allow election officials to confirm they are registering in the correct voting district. However, proof of address is not a prerequisite for registration. All applicants will complete a REC1 form in person at the voting station for the district in which they ordinarily reside. Voters without formal addresses will be required to complete and sign an affirmation form called the REC-AS, accompanying the registration form, or REC-1, in which they attest to the fact that they do in fact live in that relevant voting district. In municipal elections, voters may only vote where they are registered, and voters are reminded that it is a criminal offense to register in a voting district in which they are not ordinarily resident. To find their correct voting station, eligible voters can use one of the many forms we have. One way of doing so is to call the contact center on 0800 11 8000. This facility will be open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Throughout this week. The contact center will also be open over the registration weekend. They may use self-service facilities by dialing star 120 star 432 hash. I repeat that. They may dial star 120 star 432 hash, or they may use the voting station finder application on our website, which is at www.elections.org.za. Each voting station has also been provided with a copy of the inspection voters roll reflecting the voters currently registered in that voting district. They also have maps showing the boundaries of the voting district so that residents can point out where they live within the relevant voting district. When registering, voters' ID documents are scanned by zip machines to capture the barcode and then receive a registration receipt showing the voting district in which they have applied for registration. This receipt is stuck into a voter's ID book, and in the case of a green barcoded ID, we are familiar with the process. But in case of a smart card ID, that receipt, the proof of registration application will be affixed to a receipt. The application will be uploaded over the next few days, and the applicants are then able to check the success of their registration application by SMSing their ID number to 32810, and that service is at the cost of R1. Or they may do so by visiting the Electoral Commission on its website at www.elections.org.za, or calling our toll-free number at 0800 11 8000. The Department of Home Affairs has announced that its branches will also be open over the weekend between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. to coincide with the registration hours. This will allow voters who have not yet collected their IDs to collect them, and those who may have lost their IDs to apply for a temporary ID certificate in order to register. The department this week announced that there were over 220,000 smart card IDs that were ready for collection at its branches around the country. Enquiries regarding ID documents can be made to the Department of Home Affairs at their call center number, which is 0800 60 11 90. I repeat that number, it's 0800 60 11 90. And those who have applied for an ID can check the status of their application by SMSing their ID number to 32551. I repeat that number, it's 32551. The voters' roll as at the 31st of January 2016 showed that 24,964,498 voters were registered. Based on latest voting age population estimates provided by Statistics South Africa, there are currently approximately 34 million South African citizens of voting age, placing the current registration level at 73% of all eligible voters. Of the approximately 9 million eligible voters not currently registered, approximately 1.5 million are between 18 and 19 years. And that accounts for 16% of the registration gap. Approximately 4.3 million are between the ages of 20 and 29, and that accounts for 46% of that gap. Approximately 1.6 million are between 20 and 39 years of age, and that is 18%. Approximately 800,000 are between 40 and 49, and that is 9%. And lastly, approximately 1 million are over the age of 50, and that is 11%. From a provincial point of view, the figures show that Gauteng currently has the highest number of registered voters at 5,937,471 voters. KwaZulu-Natal is second with 5,056,518. The Eastern Cape is third with 3,161,535. It's followed by the Western Cape with 2,900,567. Then Limpopo at 2,436,112. Then Mpumalanga at 1,827,935. Then the Northwest at 1,651,242. Then the Free State at 1,418,288. And the Northern Cape at 584,830. But the statistics also show that almost 1 in 3 unregistered voters lives in Gauteng. The approximate number of unregistered voters per province are as follows. In the Eastern Cape, we are estimating 1 million, which is 11% of this gap. The Free State at 400,000, which is 4.5% of the registration gap. Gauteng has 2.7 million estimated, which makes it 30% of that gap. KwaZulu-Natal has 1.4 million estimated, which makes it 15.5% of that gap. Limpopo, 800,000, accounting for 9% of that gap. Mpumalanga at 700,000, accounting for 8% of that gap. The Northwest at 600,000 accounts for 7% of that gap. The Northern Cape, 200,000, and it accounts for 2% of that gap. The Western Cape has 1.2 million estimated voters that we are looking for, and that accounts for 13% of that gap. The Electoral Commission hopes that at least 1 million new voters will use the opportunity to register before the voters' roll closes for the 2016 municipal elections. A total of 22,570 voting stations will open this weekend. 1,711 more than we had in this similar elections in 2011. And this accounts for 8.2% increase in the facilities of voting stations that we will have in these elections. The voting stations serve voting districts covering 4,392 wards. This is up by 2.7% since 2011, when we had 4,277 wards. We have 8 metropolitan councils, which remain unchanged from what we had in 2011. We have 205 local municipalities compared to 226 that we had in 2011, and 44 district councils that remain unchanged from what we had at the previous elections. The increase in voting stations reflect not only the increase in wards following the municipal demarcation process, but also part of the ongoing efforts by the Electoral Commission to enhance accessibility to voting stations by voters. The increase in voting stations since 2011 has favored rural provinces, with 26.6% of the new voting stations in KwaZulu-Natal, 20% in Limpopo, 12.7% in Gauteng, 12.5% in the Free State, 9% in the Northwest, 8.6% in Mpumalanga, 6.5% in the Eastern Cape, 3% in the Northern Cape, and 0.7% in the Western Cape. Registration stations are located at a wide variety of premises which are leased by the Electoral Commission for registration weekends and voting days. These include schools, which account for 65% of these facilities, community and civic halls, which account for 10% of these facilities, places of worship, which account for 8% of these facilities, and community venues for the remainder. Approximately 5% of these facilities will be temporary facilities, such as tents and other temporary structures in the absence of fixed structures. Most of the voting stations will be staffed by 2 officials to assist voters to register quickly and easily bring to 51,849,000 the number of officials to be deployed for the weekend. This is a 12% increase from the previous registration weekend held ahead of the 2014 national and provincial elections in November 2013. Voting station staff are identifiable by their white T-shirts bearing the IEC logo on the front and the 2016 municipal elections logo and register to vote on the back. We thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Chief Electoral Officer. As per usual, I'm going to open the floor for questions for any matters of clarity to ensure that we understand what South Africans need to do this coming weekend. If I can check any questions for clarity, you tell us your name as well as the media house you represent, and then we'll take questions from there. Okay. Yes, please proceed.
With the number of unregistered voters, the 10 million, approximately 9 million eligible voters who are not registered, what the numbers seem to indicate is that from the ages of youth and so forth, the number is quite high, and then it goes low as the age increases. But all of a sudden, at about plus 50 years and older, the number increases to about 1 million. Is there any reason for that happening? And on the issue around being a criminal offense, I just need clarity on this. Is it also criminal offense if you register in the wrong district, as per being a criminal offense when you vote in the wrong district?
Okay. Any other hand before we respond? CEO, if you could respond to Aldrin.
Okay. The issue of young persons at the entry, at the age of entry into the voters' roll, shouldn't be an issue that should surprise us at all. We've always maintained from the Electoral Commission's point of view that young people, particularly those that have just turned 18, have not had many opportunities to register and to vote, in general registration weekends. Many people who have had those opportunities have used them. And we imagine that's why we encourage them to come in their numbers to register, because for many of them, this will be the first such opportunity in a general registration weekend. And we hope that we will get many of them in that way. The number of persons over the age of 50 that are not registered may seem like a very large number. Of course, one person that is eligible to register that's not registered with us is one too many. We would like everyone to be registered. But you would note that we did not go in age groups like, say, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, 70, because the numbers are very small in those categories. And in fact, many of the South African citizens in those age groups are enrolled on the voters' roll. It is important to say, though, that every one of them that is available out there that has not taken the opportunity to register as a voter, we are calling upon them and making an appeal that they should come forward and register as a voter. Yes, the issue of persons committing criminal offenses by registering in places where they intend to influence the outcome, one must deal with in a way separately from the issue where somebody has been affected by, let's say, the redrawing of a boundary and dealing with it. Very clearly, emphasis, even in this statement, has been on the fact that persons are encouraged to register in the places where they are ordinarily resident. Clearly, if persons intend registering outside of their voting district of ordinary residence, we, to the extent that they may have done so incorrectly in the past, will correct that. But to do so knowingly is a criminal offense.
Any other question of clarity before we wrap up?
There's a hand.
Thank you.
Okay, a few of my questions have had sleep and different things. I just wanted to know, for somebody who say is a student or works in another province, and like for 9 times out of the year you are say studying in the Western Cape, can you register that side? Or are you meant to come back and come vote where, let's say you stay with your parents back here in Midrand or wherever it is? What is the law around that?
I think it is important to note that persons, students in particular, and we do make an effort for them. We would want to catch them where they are ordinarily resident, and I think if you're at the university in Cape Town, you are, for that purpose, ordinarily resident in Cape Town, and that's where they will be registering and voting. And we say this fairly unashamedly. It is important to ensure that they are registered and they are able to vote. And for that purpose, many campuses are, in fact, where they live are ordinary places of residence for them.
Okay, so it's not against the law or anything?
No. In fact, it is important to say to them that, study hard, we support you, and
Yes.
Also your democracy needs you, support your democracy. Go out in your numbers this weekend, register, and do in fact participate and vote.
So if I vote in the Western Cape, am I being ticked off as having voted in a ward, even though they say I'm also registered in another ward in Midrand?
No, it's important that we correct that. In South Africa, your name can never appear on more than one segment of the voters' roll. We have had people trying this in the past, registering very quickly in one day here, there, and everywhere. We will only keep your last place, registration, as the place where you're ordinarily entitled to vote. But it is important to say this on this occasion. Whereas people may have done so under pretexts in the past, on this occasion we are very vigilant in respect of persons identifying where they live and registering, ensuring that they register only in the place where they are ordinarily resident. Sai, you want to share some of your...
Just one more clarification. Okay, that's fine.
Just for the people that they understand that it's just a drive this weekend, but then after this weekend there will be maybe another opportunity, or they can still walk into an IEC office and just register.
Our offices are open Mondays to Fridays, sometimes even on Saturdays, for registration and every other inquiry that voters may have. We have identified this weekend as our voter registration weekend. Let's go through this weekend and let's get everyone to come out and do what is a patriotic duty for them to do, and then we will talk beyond the weekend.
I saw a hint, Daddy.
Good day, people. My name is Neoma from IEC Readiness. I'd like to take you back to page 3 on the voters for. I see here the stats are based on voting age. In terms of race,
yes.
How many each groups is leading the pack in terms of not currently registered?
You caught me unawares now. I must say, we never look at those things in that way. Sai, I don't know if you have looked recently. We haven't. Interestingly, it might be something that we may look at. We just want to remind everyone, every South African citizen, no matter what race they are, that registering and voting is a patriotic duty, and we are calling on them to discharge that obligation to their beloved nation.
Hi, good day. Nice to see you on this team. It's Kaya here from Kaya for the News. Just in terms of, just an overview, once the registration drive has been completed, do you have a particular target that you're working around? That once everything is done and dusted, you want to have a certain number? And with regards to the proof of address, you say it's not a prerequisite for now, but any updates in terms of the Concord's appeal thus far? Thank you.
I'll deal with the last one, and I'll get my colleague to deal with the issue of the target. I think he's here for a very good reason to help in that regard. But in respect of the matter with the Concord, suffice to say for today that we are working hard with our team on that matter, and we do need the time to finalize that, and the matter will then follow its due process at the appropriate time. Sai Grenville will talk to the targets.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
I think at the outset, one must acknowledge that as a very young democracy, South Africa is doing exceptionally well as far as its voters' roll is concerned. We are currently in the high 70s, and we have in the past either been 80% or over, or very close to 80%. And the 1 million figure is basically to keep us around that that target. If you look at elsewhere democracies in the world, especially those that have been long established, that we look up to, we find that their voters' roll does not really compare to us in terms of participation. So we aim to keep it up there.
1 million.
1 million.
I will have no qualms if everyone that's not registered comes. I'll be the happiest person, and that's the call we're making today.
Kaya, you got that, ne? All right. Any other questions of clarity? Yes, in that.
For people like us, I'm registered in number of grants, but chances are on the day of elections I'll be based in Kobe. How do we
Ready? Okay. All right.
I like it when the media asks questions that affect them in the way that they ask questions that affect students, because I accept that many of you may not be covering elections from where you're ordinarily resident. But it is important to note that the people we are voting for, the office bearers we are voting for in municipal elections, are persons who will, be accountable for services in the area where you are ordinarily resident. And in that respect, the closest we have done, and we have said this in the past, was to provide special voting opportunities for yourselves, people like you, where you will apply to come to the voting station before election day, and we will administer your vote on that day to allow you to go and vote, and cover the elections in Tlokwe in this instance, in your case.
Karabo, I'm feeling better, ne? All right. There's a question. You want to add to Karabo?
Karabo, use a better example. It's a bit hurting.
All right. Yes.
How will the registration in Tlokwe take place, if any registration at all? And also, how is the delays at the demarcation board? How is it impacting on your work?
Sai, will you take the demarcation issue? The registration in Tlokwe will not be different from registration anywhere else in the country. I think one must accept that, we have 22,570 voting stations that are all expected to open at 8 on Saturday and Sunday, and service voters as may be appropriate. The Tlokwe situation is very similar to many parts of the country, where in some voting districts there will be persons that would have been affected by demarcation, for example. There will be many new people that have come up to registration age, and there will be persons that have been affected by movements of residences, and so every one of those persons will be treated in the same vein. We have indicated that we are taking precaution. We are ensuring not only in Tlokwe but across the country. We are taking precautions to ensure that persons that come to apply for registration in a voting district are in fact providing information sufficient for us to place them in that correct voting district. It will happen in Tlokwe, it will happen in Centurion, it will happen everywhere in the country in that manner. And we are grateful and look forward to assisting all the voters in a similar vein. In respect to issues of demarcation, Sai, deal with that matter for me, please.
Okay, thank you very much. The Municipal Demarcation Board completed its work on demarcation of ward boundaries in December, and they handed over those final wards to us. And based on that, we revisited the boundaries of certain voting districts. So the total figure of 22,570 takes into account the realignment and the creation of new voting districts where that was necessary. So yes, it was a bit late in the day when they were handed over, but we have recovered, and from a demarcation point of view, we have passed that hurdle.
From TBC News. This might not be a question you would be able to answer, but I'm going to ask it of you anyway. One understands that your focus is on the voters' roll, the administration, the infrastructure, setting up for elections coming up. Do your trained staff on the ground get the sense that average South Africans understand the difference between the national election and the local government election? And do they understand that the people that they are voting for are local representatives that they can hold accountable between local government elections?
Let's attempt to give you a response to that. In fact, it is so that our staff, part of the training they go through is to ensure that they understand the differences between, for example, elections of the National Assembly and the electoral system that is used in those elections versus elections of municipal councils and the systems that or the electoral systems applicable to that sphere of government. Part of the education we undertake with voters is precisely to deal with that. So on the one hand, we train staff to work in voting stations with this understanding, but in communities, our field workers, our social partners that we work with in terms of education, also seek to do, to have that understanding among members of the community. We take it very seriously from the Electoral Commission that, in fact, every South African ought to know who their ward councillor is, and that would go a long way for, in our view, to entrenching democracy, to putting a face to this thing that you vote. You participate in a democracy, you vote, and you need to know. And for that reason, on our website, you will find an application called Who is My Ward Councillor? And all you need to do is put in your ID number, and it will tell you who your ward councillor is where you live. It will also give you the contact details of that ward councillor. And we believe this is a small contribution we could be making to our nation to make sure that people are in touch with their councillors and that councillors do, in fact, get engaged with the people that they serve. Thank you very much.
Looks like we have covered all the questions.
Just one final question.
Okay, all right.
Would we first have to have an announcement of the date of the elections before there's a deadline as to when political parties must submit the names of their potential candidates?
An election date will first be announced, and following that, in fact, it's not just an announcement. In law, it's called a proclamation, which is an act of law. Once that has happened, it sets into process a number of things that must then happen. And one of those would include a cutoff date for the submission of the list of candidates for parties and candidates that wish to contest the elections.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I just want to do a quick correction on page 3 of the media statement, where we look at the number of eligible voters. The third part that deals with 1.6 million, it's instead of 20 to 39 years old age band, it's actually 30 to 39 years old age band, but we'll also correct it as well on the electronic copy that you'll be receiving. On that note, perhaps, CEO, let me take this opportunity to thank colleagues from the media. This weekend is going to be a massive, massive partnership.
Yeah.
As we go out of this room, the biggest appeal is to ensure that South Africans get the correct information. It will not serve our nation to try and provide any other different version. The information is available electronically on our website. We've got all sorts of facilities. If there's any question of clarity, Aldrin, rather check with us than assuming that something it is when it's not. So, and for the past weeks, I must say, CEO, that the media as a partner has been incredible in supporting the work of the IEC. And we know that coming weekend, South Africans are going to rely on you to ensure that they get the correct information. We have provided you with all sorts of facilities online to enable your work. I see another hand in that day.
I thought we'd done.
Neo?
Kikarab, let's talk. Over the weekend,
Yep.
if you want to access the stations,
Yes.
is there any special clearance that you're going to need? Or how is it going to work?
All right. Let's get Mama Wolo to confirm that for us.
No, there is no special clearance. Just talk to the registration supervisor. It's not an election day. We should have sufficient access to the registration station.
Okay. On that note, thank you very, very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Kolobe, thanks. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you in that case. Let's just double check. I don't think there's any sidelines.
I think we're
good to go. We're good to go. We're good to go. We're good to go. You wanted to quick soundbite for the minister. I'm going to rely on you, know that, isn't it? This weekend,